Welcome to the Conan Doyle Casebook, where there's always a story to tell. Well, good evening and welcome to the Conan Doyle Casebook. And my guest tonight, Leonard Low, who was born in Upper Largo in 1967 and has a passion for the morbid, ghastly side of history, and especially the witch-killing years. Now, he's amassed a fair library holding the source materials for most of the known witch trials in Britain, and uses this for his research. He lectures on the subject to all, and he has a medieval tower, which I've actually visited, in Pittenweem. And he's brought out a number of books, appeared on TV, in papers and magazines. And today, we are going to be talking about his other interest in the paranormal. Good evening, Lenny.
Good evening. How are you yourself?
Not bad at all. So how are you?
Good. I've been suffering a sore back recently, but it's not kept me immobile. I've been very active
and on the mend, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, I've known you for a number of years now, and I've visited Pittenweem Tower, and certainly, from all accounts, and I've experienced that, definitely a haunted location. But I'm just wondering, going back, what got you interested in the paranormal?
I as a child, we used to shoot away to the Western Islands for our holidays, and we'd have a stopover at Perth, usually a fantastic bookshop, and we were allowed to choose a book before our holidays. I was 10 years old, and I got a book, John Scottish Ghosts, I think it was just called. And it covered a lot of the castles and the traditional stories, but they were new to me. And that fascinated me because we're actually visiting some of the castles where these stories came from. Nothing supernatural happened, but it gripped me. And through my youth, I've always had a fascination for it. But it wasn't until I came across it firsthand that intrigued me like nothing else. And that first-hand incident was when I was 27, and would you believe my sister had died? She was only 36. I was saying 27, and it was the day before our funeral. I was in Largo, my mother's house. My mother's got a grand old house of 5 bedrooms built in 1776. And so it was a sad occasion, but her death wasn't unexpected. It was a kind of attrition, really, with kidney failure that finally got her. But it was during the night. I had all my clothes prepared for the funeral, the sad day the next day. And I had my old room. I was living in London at the time, so I was back up from London. I had my old room in the house, and went to bed. Shut the lights off. Always have a read first before I go to bed. Put the book down and settled. And the next, I got a strange blast of wind came across me. A freezing cold breeze, which was not unnatural in my mum's house because it was so old. But this is summertime, and I immediately looked around the room, and a voice came and went, "It's me, it's your Lorna," which was my sister's name. And I looked at the edge of my bed, and there was my sister sitting on the edge of my bed in a gown, and she smiled at me. And I could see her reflection in the mirror. I mean, this is real. And I bit my cushion and screamed like a little girl, would you believe? I honestly did. It's my own sister. I screamed into my cushion like a girl. I got up, and she was still there, and she looked shocked, and then she just vanished. She just faded away. I was freaked out. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. I got up, I dressed, I went to see my brother. He told me I was going mad. And what I did is I got a wee half bottle of whiskey, and I walked up the near 1,000-foot Largo Law, and I sat there all night. I was in bits. I was in absolute bit. I love my sister, but I was in bits. But she always said, she'd say cheerio to me before she went. And, you know, this is her in the hospital, and she always said she'd say cheerio to me, and that was my first sort of supernatural experience. What I saw was real, and it was personal, and it moved me. And in later years, when I wasn't working, I would go and investigate problem places in London, and I started getting results, started catching these things on camera. And I was at Archway Hospital. Archway Hospital's in North London. It's a big general hospital, 350 odd beds it has, but it's got a history going back to Richard III, and it was originally a leper colony. Now I had the tower at the time. I think me and you were involved in the tower at that time. That must be about 2006, 7. But when I first met you. And I caught something on camera in the tower, and it made the Sunday papers, like a double spread in the Sunday papers. And while I was in the hospital in London, the papers were getting spread around, and they saw me, they recognized me. So they said, look, we've got something going on in the basement of the hospital here. 2 floors beneath the ground, we've got the old leper hospital. It was a smallpox hospital. Now it's a general hospital. But it says, well, down here we've got loads and loads of corridors of files, and occasionally we've got to go down there. But our nurses won't go down there on their own. They have to be accompanied because of seeing and hearing something. So would you go down and investigate? And I went, I'd love to. So I did. I went to the hospital, and I got one of the administrators of their PALS team. And she was a big, hefty woman, and she took me down the stairs in a big bunch of keys. I mean, these are smallpox files going back to World War I, and the samples and all kinds of nasties down there. So in the wrong hands, somebody could have had a great time down there. But anyway, I went down with her, and we're wandering the corridors, and the brickwork I was seeing wasn't medieval. This is kind of new brickwork. So I said, we're in the wrong area. This isn't the leper hospital. So we came to what was a fire station with the hoses and the extinguishers and stuff. And it was a big, massive wooden board. And I moved the wooden board, and lo and behold, behind the wooden board, there's a passageway. And I went, this is the medieval hospital. And we went in, and it was incredible. It was an array of arches, big arches underneath the hospital. The ground was crystallized. No one had been here for many hundreds of years. It was crystallized like snow. The ground would hold your weight, and then you'd crunch through into it. And this was what I'd expect to be the old leper hospital. Anyway, we're wandering about there when the administrator and with started to panic because she'd seen something up front, and she knocked me flying. She had enough. She was getting out of there, and she knocked me flying. And I looked round, and I got my camera out, and there was something forming in 15, 20 yards in front of us. Something was forming, and a yellow thing. And I started rattling off photographs as I was reversing, because the door's locked. You can't get out. You can only so she's got the keys. So I've got one foot on the door and the other my hand firing away at the camera. But I rattled off about 6 shots, and what I saw with my own eyes was a child, but it was about a meter off the ground. I mean, it had the full face of a child, shoulders, chest, and I can't remember much else. But then this is what came out in the photographs, and we were amazed when we were studying these later on. And then I asked the hospital, because what was a child a meter off the ground, and they said, well, we actually to make room for the files cabinets and stuff down there, we had to dig down into the earth, and we removed about 2-3 foot of ground. And I went, so this figure we've caught would have been standing on the original ground if it was back in the 1500s, 1600s or whatever. So that makes it very interesting to me that there's a figure still walking about from all these years ago, and it's floating in the air. Yeah,
that's scary in the same way that the previous experience.
Sorry?
Did that scare you? What happened in the same way as the previous experience, or were you now starting to get a little bit more used to the idea of?
Well, I think my laundry bill was huge after that one. It was most unexpected. That was in your face kind of ghostliness. With my sister, it was more. I knew she was dead. I'd watched her. Well, I hadn't watched her die, but I'd watched her deteriorate. I wasn't there in the end, but I knew who this person was in front of me, and this person wasn't alive. I got her funeral that day. That's what horrified me, and a natural reaction. I mean, I bit my cushion and screamed like a big Jessie. I mean, one day I'll meet my sister again, I'm sure, and she'll just laugh at me.
When that happened, would you have said you were quite skeptical about things, or always looked at the logical?
Well, nothing had ever happened in that way to me. I'd never gone looking for it. I'd never kind of had an experience such as that. And it's not like bird watching when you're prepared to see something in front of you. It just happens, and then if you have a camera, crack on. If not, you're very lucky to catch anything. But it's the fright of it. Back in the tower in Pittenweem, we had I think you yourself saw something in the tower, but at least you felt it. I sat in my tower. I'd come up from London at the weekends, and I'd sit in my tower, and I'd have all of my cameras and recording equipment, and I'd leave the building, and stuff would still be running, and only because so many people had seen things, full figures. I hadn't seen anything yet. I'd heard it, but I hadn't seen it. And I'd sit there in the dark. 10 months of absolutely nothing. And I came up from London every weekend. I'd do a tour and sit there till to the early hours in the morning, trying to catch something. And 10 months of nothing, absolutely nothing. And then I had maybe 3 weeks of, it was happening every night. I couldn't believe it. It was incredible. And that's the thing about these ghost hunting programs that I loathe to the back teeth, where they catch something on every single program. That doesn't happen, I'm telling you now.
There is a history to the Pittenweem Clock Tower, isn't there?
Of course, the disgusting, horrific history with the persecution of witches. They found 26 in 5 different witch trials. In fact, I found another one. I've just found more history of another one they found way back in 1597, but she got let off. But I held the records for Pittenweem parish for a while, and from these, I constructed my book, The WEEM WITCH, which is basically the biography of the witches of Pittenweem. If you don't know it, it's a horrific period of Scottish history, but it was happening in every village, every town, to a disgusting extent. It's just in Pittenweem, the buildings that took part of the torture and the court cases, they still exist today, and the the history is embedded in the walls, as you know yourself. You've been there many times.
So from Pittenweem, and because I know you've been very busy over the last year, even couple of years, because it's been quite you have some stories to tell.
Well, in London, with the archway photographs that I got, I met Maurice Goss. Now Maurice Goss, if you can remember the name, was the investigator in the Enfield Poltergeist case. He's dead now, but I met him not long after, because it was in the photograph went to about 40 different newspapers in Britain anyway, and in the States. It got spread around like wildfire, and the photograph of this wee boy's face. I mean, I got to meet Maurice Goss, and the Enfield haunting, which they recently did a film of it, Conjuring 2, which was, when I saw it, was totally hilarious, because the Americans think a council house is like a bit of a castle over this way, and what they portrayed it was hilarious. It's a wee 3-bedroom council house, Enfield House, but if you watch the Conjuring film, it's like a 3-bedroom mansion, the way that they've Americanized it. But anyway, I recently in lockdown, naughty, I got called to a house in Kennoway. Now, I don't have a name. There's 2 of us in this team. There's me and my pal Roger Wilson. Roger's he's a tech bod and sound technician. That's his trade, and a handyman to know when you're picking up whispers and noises from these buildings, and you can put them on his machines and highlight what he catches. He's a really good guy. There's me and him. That's it. You don't need a big group. We don't need a fancy name. And with me and him, we get results. We recently we got called to a house in Kennoway, rather modern, 100-year-old house. And the problem being was the woman in the house, it's a bungalow, a very modern-looking, lovely bungalow. I won't give the name of the people or where the house was, but they're quite private people. But anyway, they have 2 trapdoors in the roof of their house, one in the kitchen and one in the kind of hallway. And they started getting slaters started falling from one of the trapdoors. And she went, "Oh, this is bad." It's because the slaters love the damp. So she got up in the loft and had a hunt around. This is what's creating the slaters. And in this process, she came across a suitcase. And she didn't know it was there. It had been there from the last owners. She had brought it down, opened it up. It was full of Masonic clothes, robes and clothes of the Masonic lodge. And they didn't have a care for this kind of stuff. So they binned it. They threw it out, the whole lot. These robes and stuff. From the minute they did this, they started suffering bangs and crashes in the house. She explained to me how she went to the kitchen and all the upper units slapped open their doors. She nearly got hit in the face with them. They all bashed open at one point. She called me and Roger in, and what we do, we go in, we'll do a bit of history on the place. We'll get a feel for the place and explain to the owners what we intend to do. Then we come back, spread cameras all over the place, motion sensors, cameras. We've got a recording gear, and we'll go to town. And it took the first time we sat down and had a blether there. Strange, freezing cold air blasts would hit us, coming from nowhere. And I thought, yeah, this is interesting. There's something, this is going back to Largo when I saw my sister. That was a premonition before she arrived. Was this icy cold blast, and we were getting that in the house, and so we got permission to come back, and we came back and we set up our stuff. Now, in the house, as they were telling me what was happening to them, I try and give similar cases to comfort them that they're not alone, that this isn't just happening to you, it's happened to others before. And one such case, obviously this thing has started because she threw out this suitcase full of Masonic clothes. So I gave a case, we're going right back to 1950s, where a case in Fort William, where a couple moved into an old gamekeeper's cottage, and they moved into it near Fort William, and they were going to be crofters, and they came up from London, set up, and they were doing great. It's an upstairs, downstairs house. But what was annoying the woman was that there were these massive roses that blocked out the light from our windows. So what she did was she decided to cull them. So she went out and she chopped down the roses. So the minute she chopped down the roses in the house, there was bangs and crashes and strange things going on at night, and terrifying the life of them. And it came to the point where they had a visitor, and in the middle of the night, they both woke up with a loud crash, looked down the hallway, and here on her hands and knees, crawling towards them, was a really old woman, pulling herself along the floor. They screamed their heads off and got out of the house. They found the history was this old dear was the previous owner of the house. She was in a wheelchair bound, and how she'd get herself to bed at night was she'd pull the wheelchair to the stairs and then pull herself up, and then her legs didn't work. Then she'd pull herself to bed. This is what she did every night. That's what they saw. But this woman's pride and joy, the only pride and joy, was to wheel herself outside and care for her roses. Of course, they've just ripped them down. Well, the family, I mean, I could go on and on about this case, but the family was there for, the couple were there for about 6 months, and they left. And the next couple that moved in, they had the same problem. And it got to the point where the estate, they blew the house up. Nobody could live there. They blew the place out. Nothing exists of it anymore, apart from the letters and stories of what I've just given. So this is what I was telling the woman in Kennoway about this. You've thrown out something that belonged to the previous owner, like the house in Inverness. Fort William, sorry. They took down something. They ripped down the flowers that belonged to a previous owner. Anyway, that's what created the haunting. This is what I think you have. But the dog's gone daft. But we left the house, and the next day I got a phone call from the owners, and they were in bits. I says, what seems to be the problem? It says, you're not going to believe this. It says, we went to bed as normal last night, and when we woke up in the morning, me and my wife, we were covered in rose petals. And I went, you what? It says, we were covered in rose petals. Something was listening to you last night, and we're now even more terrified. 2 days later, they opened up a cupboard in the kitchen, and there was the head of a rose. And this is, we don't know where this came from. This is spooking us out. So me and Rog, we descended in the house for the next 3 weeks, set up cameras all over the place, and at one point, we've been asking questions, and we were getting a voice coming through on our tape recorders, and it was a lot of swearing. It was very unhappy with us being there, and we're kind of taunting it with its Masonic clothes getting thrown out, and it was going to town. It was telling me to F off and everything, but we gave it a rest, and the owner said, would you like a cup of tea? And I said, yeah, we'll sit down. And so we sat down in the living room. I got up to help the woman in the kitchen. She was in my eye view. She went through, and she's put on the kettle. And so I'm just standing there chatting, and she's fine. And basically, we set up cameras when we do things. So she'd been watching me speak in the kitchen and record this voice swearing at me. She'd been looking at a television in the living room of us doing this. And all of a sudden, she's just pouring the tea, making a cup of tea for us. And there's this almighty bang, and she screamed. I looked at her, she looked at me, and I went, "What on earth was that?" So I walked into the kitchen, and a plate in the cupboard had just exploded. It exploded into 3 pieces, like somebody had hit it. The plate was the top of maybe 7 plates. It had about an inch between the plate and the shelf above it. But so there was no trickery. There was no hidden banger or anything to set this plate off and try and spook us. It had just broken. I mean, this thing had exploded. So what we have here is proper poltergeist activity. This thing is listening, acting, and showing itself. We caught it on camera, and we went up another weekend where we got absolutely nothing. It was really quiet. But then the next weekend, we got asked to come up, and the couple were looking very scared. He says, "Could you just go in our bedroom and see what's happened?" He says, "My wife was in the kitchen. I was in the garden digging, and from my garden, I saw my curtains in the spare room just fly. They flew. The curtains flew." He says, "I went to the bedroom, and what had happened was the curtains were on the other side of the bed. They travel about 2 meters, but they'd been completely. You could only get this effect if you grabbed the curtains and pulled with a heavy weight, and the actual fittings were ripped out the wall. They were over by the bed. A glass vase had disintegrated. It hadn't smashed. It disintegrated. It was like a car windscreen. It was all over the floor, glass everywhere. And again, nobody was anywhere near this. And to create that kind of damage, I don't know how you do it. They left things as they were for us to see, and we got photo. I mean, we weren't there when it happened, but this thing is vicious. We got a lot more swearing at us that night on the recording, and then the thing disappeared as quick as 3 months. It terrorized this family for, and it disappeared. And ever since then, there's been nothing at all. No action, no nothing. They don't think they did anything special to get rid of it or appease it. They just stopped. So that's the life of a poltergeist for you.
Do they feel more settled again, or are they all?
Sorry?
Do they feel more settled again? Do they feel kind of
well, I have to say that the house felt really uncomfortable every time we went in. It didn't feel right. And you know that feeling when you go in a place. You've been in many now, but whatever was there left. Will it come back? We don't know, but certainly we got the best of it on film and camera, and we will. Me and Roger, we will be lecturing. We do a haunted, ghostly lecture. Now we've got even more ammunition for the next ones we do.
So if there was anywhere you would really like to investigate, had the choice of anywhere, where would it?
I hate I hate the word most haunted. This is Edinburgh Dungeons, the most haunted place. What's that compared to? I mean, I hate that kind of thing. I wouldn't go to a place because so many, the Mackenzie's tomb, I wouldn't go there. So many people have seen it. You're expecting to see it. It's become like a zoo attraction. I wouldn't appreciate it. I prefer. I tell you what I would like to do. I'd like to stick a camera down the Bottle Dungeon in St Andrews. No one's done that before, but I'd like to, while 20 years ago I had to sit on endless hundreds of hours surviving on fish suppers and get nothing from my efforts of being a ghost hunter, just waiting and watching and sitting. Now you can do that with like motion sensors, cameras. I can set cameras up all over the place for 3 months, and I don't need to be there, which is fantastic. And these are what are getting results these days. If you get the right place in the right setting and a bit of luck, you can actually catch these things, and you don't need to be there.
So you have various books out at the moment, and the latest one I believe is the Untold Stories, Scotland's Untold Stories.
Scotland's Untold Stories. There's no ghost stories in this book. It's basically true history, true quirky history through Scotland. No, we'll talk about Burke and Hare, Burke's skeletons in the Edinburgh Museum, the Scientist Museum. But what happened to Hare? Well, I found what happened to Hare, and that's one of the stories in the book. We had a cannibal, Sonny Bean. Everybody knows Sonny Bean. Sonny Bean's a story invented by the English to blaspheme the Scots. But there was a cannibal family living and caught behind Dundee in Moniki, sorry. And I write about them. Jack the Ripper, 1888. Did you know there was a Jack the Ripper, 1888, terrorizing Pittenweem? But I didn't know that. And the Moor murderers. The Moor murderers were in St. Monans, and I have a chapter to a lad who got a very lucky escape when he was 6 years old, when a tall blonde woman tried to coax him into the back of her van. And his sister, in the nick of time, said, "No, you've got to come home. Otherwise, he would have ended up at Newark Castle, where the Moor murderers went right after that." We might have had another sad story to talk about, another chapter of the Moor murderers at Newark Castle if it wasn't for this boy's sister. These are the stories I love. My new book came out in December. I thought, brilliant, we've got the Christmas market. the shops all stocked it and then shut down for 6 months. So it's only now the book's circulating and people can get access to it. But it is a cracker, and it's available from the bookshop. Scotland's Untold Stories. Give it a go. I think you'll like it.
I was going to finish off by asking you about one wee quirky story. And I remember you talking about this, which I thought was fascinating. And there was a witch from Orkney who had a very
yeah, she's in the book. She's fantastic. She's one of my heroes. So Walter Scott went on his journeys around the Isles of Scotland, and with his biographer, and wrote about the islands. And when he went to the Orkney, he met a woman who lived at the top of Stromness in a wee cottage. And there used to be, she was a legend. This is about 1815. And she was an old dear, had leathery skin, he said, and he got to meet her. But her fame was all the fishermen, before they went and set off to go fishing, they'd go up and see this old woman. I forget her name, but they'd go and see her, and she'd sit with them, and they'd pay her some money. And what she used to do is she used to turn around, and they'd get their hands cupped, you see, ready to receive something. And and what she used to do is she used to fart in their hands, right, and they'd catch it, and then they'd take this fart down to their boats, and where their boat is lying ready to sail, they'd throw the fart away, and it would give wind to the sails. So there you go. She, enterprising woman, who earned a fortune. And would you believe that Sir Walter Scott actually received this token of from this woman, paid his money, got his lovely wee fart, and took it down to the boat that they were using, and it worked.
Well, if anyone would like to find out more information or visit any sites or find out more about your books, where can they go to?
Well, my books sell well, you want a book, you go to a bookshop. Any bookshops have my books, Leonard Low's books. I've got 5 now. As I said, latest one is Scotland's Untold Stories. I will have another book out possibly end of the year, and that'll be the Lowdown on Witches, which will be 30 cases of Scottish witchcraft, but that's in the future. You can get me on Facebook, Leonard Low. I've got my own page. Say hello to me. I'll invite you on. It's a private one, but it's got all my ghosty stuff, and I think you'll like it. Otherwise, try Amazon. You get all my books on Amazon. I don't receive much from Amazon when they sell books there, but that's where they are. Try the bookshops, or even personal message me. You can buy books off me.
Well, it's been fascinating speaking to you. You've spoken to the centre before many times, and it's always fascinating conversation. So I hope you come back, and we could talk about witchcraft at some point.
I miss your cheeky face.
So once again, thank you very much for joining us.
It's not a problem. It's an honour. I support what you do, and I love your little talkings, and it's always a pleasure to be a guest.
Thank you very much. Good evening.